She gave birth alone while her billionaire husband cheated. What happened next? Destroyed him. Hello my beautiful family. Welcome to another video where love meets truth and hearts find healing. You know, sometimes I wonder if my love for you is like the sun, always shining, always warm. But why does it feel like the shadows grow when I ask for just a simple like or comment? If I didn't ask, would you still reach out? Would your heart still beat for this family? I'm not asking out of need, I'm asking out of love, because your light feeds my soul when you write, I am here, and press that like button. It's more than a click, it's a heartbeat, it's a whisper that says, you are not alone. And that whisper makes me stronger than the storms outside. Now settle in, set your perfect listening atmosphere, and get comfortable. Let's begin. 2018, in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles, love looked like ramen noodles for dinner, and dreams bigger than bank accounts. Patty Martinez was 28 years old, beautiful in the way that comes from having a heart too big for her own good. She had these warm brown eyes that saw potential in everyone, especially in the man sitting across from her at their second-hand kitchen table, surrounded by laptops, coffee cups, and the scattered papers of ambition. Carlson was 30, a brilliant tech programmer from San Francisco, who could code solutions to problems that didn't even exist yet. But genius doesn't pay rent, and revolutionary ideas don't buy groceries. He had been rejected by 17 investors in 3 months, each no hitting him like a physical blow. But Patty saw something those investors missed. She saw the future in his frustrated sighs, heard billions in his midnight coding sessions. You're going to change the world, baby, she would whisper to him on those dark nights when rejection letters piled up like broken promises. And I'll be right there with you. Those weren't just words of comfort, they were a covenant, a sacred promise, between two hearts that believed love could build empires. But belief doesn't pay bills, so Patty worked 2 jobs to keep their dreams alive. By day she was a paralegal at Henderson & Associates, a mid-tier law firm in downtown LA, filing documents and managing calendars for lawyers who barely noticed her existence. The pay was decent, but not enough. So by night she waitressed at Café Luna, a trendy bistro in West Hollywood, where celebrities sometimes dined and left tips that made the difference between making rent and sleeping in their car. 16-hour days became Patty's normal. She would leave their apartment at 6:30 a.m., work until 5 p.m. at the law firm, drive across the city in LA traffic, and serve tables until 2 a.m. Then she'd come home to find Carlson still hunched over his computer, working on the platform that would eventually make them billionaires. She'd heat up leftover pasta, massage his shoulders, and listen to him explain algorithms she didn't understand but believed in completely. Their garage in Culver City became the birthplace of something extraordinary. It wasn't much, a converted single-car space behind their apartment building, filled with second-hand desks, cheap monitors, and the constant hum of overworked computers. But in that garage, magic happened. Carlson was building a social media platform that would revolutionize how businesses networked, how professionals connected, how entire industries would communicate. The vulnerable moments were what Patty treasured most. After particularly brutal investor meetings, Carlson would come home defeated, his confidence shattered. He'd sit on their couch, a lumpy thing they'd bought at a garage sale, and just cry. Not the angry tears of frustration, but the deep soul-crushing sobs of a man who wondered if he was deluding himself about his own capabilities. What if they're right, Patty? He'd whisper against her shoulder as she held him. What if I'm just another programmer with delusions of grandeur? What if I'm wasting your life, your youth, your everything on something that will never work? And Patty, this woman who was sacrificing her own dreams to fund his, would hold him tighter and speak truth into his broken spirit. Carlson, you are the most brilliant man I've ever known. Those investors don't see what I see. They don't know that you stay up until 4 a.m. perfecting code that already works perfectly. They don't know that you've solved problems in 3 lines that take other programmers 30. They don't know you like I know you. Trust me, baby, trust us. Those early years taught them both what love looked like when it was tested by poverty, stress, and seemingly impossible odds. Patty would sneak extra bread rolls from the restaurant into her purse, so Carlson would have something to eat during his coding marathons. Carlson would surprise her with wildflowers picked from the vacant lot behind their building, knowing she loved beauty but they couldn't afford real bouquets. Then in March 2019, everything changed. The breakthrough came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Carlson had been working for 36 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination, when he finally cracked the networking algorithm that would make their platform unique. He woke Patty up shaking with excitement, showing her lines of code that looked like gibberish but represented their future. "Patty, wake up, I did it. I finally did it." His voice cracked with exhaustion and joy. "This is going to work. This is really going to work." Within 6 months, they had their first investor, a small venture capital firm that saw the potential Patty had believed in all along. $50,000 felt like $50 million to people who had been living on $12 grocery budgets, but it was just the beginning. The social media platform launched in beta in September 2019, and within weeks, it was clear they had created something special. Businesses were signing up by the thousands. Fortune 500 companies were taking meetings. The tech world was buzzing with excitement about this revolutionary networking tool built in a garage in Culver City by a programmer nobody had heard of and funded by a waitress who believed in impossible dreams. Patty's role was never just emotional support. She had a natural gift for business strategy, an intuitive understanding of market dynamics that complemented Carlson's technical genius perfectly. While he built the platform, she built the business plan. While he coded solutions, she solved logistical problems. She negotiated their first office lease, hired their first employees, managed their finances with the precision of someone who knew exactly what poverty felt like. By December 2019, they had moved from their Culver City garage to a legitimate office space in Silicon Valley. The transition was surreal, going from a converted garage to a gleaming building with floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture. But they were still the same people, still holding hands during investor meetings, still eating lunch together every day, still sharing dreams and fears like the young couple who had started with nothing but love and ambition. The IPO happened in June 2020, initial public offering, 3 words that transformed them from struggling entrepreneurs into billionaires overnight. Patty remembered standing on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, watching their company's stock price climb higher and higher, feeling like she was watching someone else's life unfold. Carlson squeezed her hand as the closing bell rang and whispered in her ear, "We did it, baby. We actually did it." That night, in their hotel room overlooking Manhattan, they made love like the young, broke couple they used to be, but woke up as billionaires. The irony wasn't lost on Patty. They had achieved everything they had dreamed of, but something fundamental was already beginning to shift between them. The Beverly Hills mansion came next, 12,000 square feet of marble and glass, perched in the hills like a monument to their success. 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a wine cellar, a home theater, an infinity pool that seemed to drop off into the city lights below. It was everything Patty had never dared to dream of during those ramen noodle dinners, but somehow, walking through its echoing rooms, she missed their cramped apartment and lumpy couch. Success, they discovered, was a seductive and dangerous thing. It changed how people looked at them, how they looked at themselves, and eventually, how they looked at each other. Carlson began receiving invitations to exclusive events, being featured on magazine covers, giving interviews about the future of technology. Suddenly, he wasn't just Patty's boyfriend who coded in their garage. He was Carlson Rana, tech visionary, billionaire entrepreneur, the man who had revolutionized business networking. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Patty began to disappear from the narrative. The woman who had funded his dreams, believed in his vision, and sacrificed her youth for their shared future became simply the wife. Not the co-founder, not the business strategist, not the woman who made this possible, just the wife. The transformation wasn't sudden, it was a gradual erosion, like water wearing away stone. Carlson started hiring assistants to handle tasks Patty used to manage. He began taking meetings without her, making decisions without consulting her, representing their company as if it had been his vision alone. When reporters asked about his success, he would mention hard work, determination, and vision, but rarely mentioned the woman who had worked 2 jobs to make that vision possible. Then came Shannon Wells, a 26 years old, fresh MBA from Stanford, ambitious and calculating in ways that reminded Patty of herself at that age, except Shannon's ambitions didn't include sacrificing for someone else's dreams. She became Carlson's new executive assistant in January 2021, hired to manage his increasingly complex schedule and growing list of professional obligations. Shannon was everything Patty wasn't anymore: young, unattached, available for late nights and weekend work. She dressed impeccably, spoke the language of high-level business, and most dangerously, she looked at Carlson like he was a god instead of a man who used to cry on a second-hand couch. Patty's friend Nicole was the first to notice the changes. Nicole and Patty had been friends since college, two young women navigating life in Los Angeles together. Nicole worked in marketing for an entertainment company and had a gift for reading people and situations that bordered on psychic. "He's different with her," Nicole observed during one of their weekly coffee dates in Beverly Hills. "The way he looks at Shannon, the way he includes her in conversations, the way he, I don't know, Patty. It's like he lights up around her in a way he doesn't with you anymore." But Patty, loyal to a fault, defended the man she loved. "Nicole, you're reading too much into it. Shannon is just good at her job. Carlson has a lot of pressure right now, and she helps him manage everything. There's nothing romantic about efficiency." Yet privately, Patty had noticed things too. The way Carlson's phone would buzz with text messages at midnight, messages he would read and respond to immediately. The way Shannon seemed to have designer handbags and jewelry that should have been impossible on an assistant's salary. The way Carlson had stopped really seeing Patty when she entered a room, his eyes automatically scanning for Shannon instead. The intimacy between Patty and Carlson began to fade like photographs left in sunlight. They still lived in the same house, still attended the same events, still wore their wedding rings and played the part of the successful power couple. But the casual touches stopped, the spontaneous conversations ended, the shared dreams became separate ambitions. When Patty would suggest date nights, Carlson would sigh with the weariness of a man carrying the world's weight. "Patty, I'm exhausted from work. Can't you see I'm building something important here?" When she would try to curl up next to him on their expensive couch, he would claim urgent emails demanded his attention. When she would dress up hoping to catch his eye, he would barely glance up from his phone. The woman who had believed in him when no one else would, who had worked 2 jobs to fund his dreams, who had stood by him through rejection after rejection, was becoming invisible in her own marriage. And the most heartbreaking part was how gradual it all felt, how each small dismissal seemed reasonable in isolation, how easy it was to rationalize the slow death of their connection. But love, even when it's taken for granted, doesn't die quietly. It fights, it hopes, it makes excuses and holds on longer than logic would dictate. Patty loved Carlson the way she had had him in their garage, with the fierce loyalty of someone who had chosen to believe in forever. She just didn't know yet that forever was about to be tested in ways that would either destroy them completely or teach them what love actually means when everything else falls away. Have you ever supported someone's dreams so completely that you lost yourself in the process? Share your experience below. The affair didn't begin with a kiss or a stolen moment of passion. It began with something far more dangerous: intellectual connection and emotional intimacy disguised as professional collaboration. Shannon Wells had been working as Carlson's executive assistant for 6 months when the lines between business and personal began to blur in ways that felt natural, almost inevitable. It started with late-night strategy sessions in Carlson's corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Silicon Valley lights below. Shannon would bring coffee at 9 p.m., intending to review the next day's schedule, but somehow they'd find themselves talking until midnight about market expansion, competitive analysis, and the future of technology. These conversations had an electric quality that Carlson hadn't felt in years, the thrill of being truly understood by someone who spoke his professional language fluently. Shannon was brilliant in ways that complemented Carlson's vision perfectly. Where Patty had been supportive and believing, Shannon was challenging and strategic. Where Patty had been emotional and intuitive, Shannon was analytical and ambitious. Shannon didn't just believe in Carlson's ideas, she improved them, refined them, pushed them to places he hadn't considered. "You know what your problem is, Carlson," Shannon said one evening, leaning against his desk as they reviewed quarterly projections. "You're still thinking like the garage startup guy. You've built $1 billion empire, but you're afraid to act like the visionary you actually are." These words hit differently than Patty's constant encouragement. Shannon wasn't telling him he could change the world. She was telling him he already had, and now it was time to claim his place among the titans of industry. It was intoxicating to be seen not as the man he was becoming, but as the man he believed he was destined to be. The emotional affair developed gradually, hidden behind the legitimacy of business necessity. Shannon began traveling with Carlson to investor meetings, industry conferences, and networking events. She was his right hand, his strategic advisor, his professional confidant, and slowly, she became his emotional escape from a marriage that felt increasingly ordinary compared to the extraordinary empire they were building together. Carlson began justifying the growing intimacy with logic that felt reasonable in isolation. "Patty doesn't understand the pressure I'm under. She wants me to come home and talk about our day, but how do I explain board meetings and acquisition strategies to someone who's never operated at this level? Shannon gets it. Shannon lives in this world with me." The business trips multiplied and intensified. Monaco for an exclusive tech summit, Dubai for emerging markets conferences, the Maldives for a private investor's rate. Each trip felt more essential than the last, and Shannon's presence felt more indispensable. They shared 5-star hotel suites with adjoining rooms, dined at restaurants where meals cost more than most people's monthly salaries, and walked on beaches where privacy was guaranteed by wealth and exclusivity. In Monaco, overlooking the Mediterranean from a penthouse suite, the emotional affair finally became physical. It happened after a particularly successful investor dinner, when adrenaline and champagne and the intoxicating rush of closing a major deal lowered inhibitions that had been weakening for months. Shannon kissed him first, but Carlson didn't hesitate to kiss back. "This is what success feels like," Shannon whispered against his ear as they stood on the balcony, Monaco's lights glittering below them like fallen stars. "This is what you deserve. Not questions about when you're coming home or complaints about feeling lonely. You deserve someone who understands the magnitude of what you've built." Back home in Beverly Hills, Patty was living a different reality entirely. She had discovered she was pregnant at 32, and the joy was overwhelming. After years of building Carlson's empire, after sacrificing her 20s for their shared dreams, she was finally going to have the family she had always wanted. She had envisioned telling Carlson over a romantic dinner, watching his face light up with the same excitement she felt. Instead, his response was lukewarm at best, tinged with frustration and poorly concealed annoyance. "Now, really, Patty, with everything happening at the company, we're in the middle of 3 major acquisitions. The board is breathing down my neck about expansion into Asian markets, and you want to add a baby to the mix." The words hit Patty like physical blows. This was the man who had once promised her they would build a family together, who had whispered about having children during their garage days when babies felt like distant dreams they would someday afford. Now, when they could give a child everything, Carlson acted like pregnancy was an inconvenience threatening his professional momentum. "I thought you'd be happy," Patty said quietly, her hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. "I thought this was what we always wanted." "I am happy," Carlson replied, but his tone suggested otherwise. "It's just timing, you know. Maybe we should have discussed this first. Maybe we should have planned better." As if love and babies and the creation of life could be scheduled between board meetings and investor presentations. Patty's isolation during pregnancy was perhaps the cruelest part of the betrayal. Friends began drifting away as she consistently defended Carlson's absence, made excuses for his disinterest, and pretended that working 18-hour days was normal for expectant fathers. Social invitations decreased as people grew tired of watching Patty arrive alone to events, explaining that Carlson was too busy with work to attend baby showers, prenatal classes, or dinner parties. Nicole became increasingly direct in her observations and warnings. "Patty, honey, he's treating you like furniture. Like something that's supposed to be there when he needs it, but otherwise doesn't require attention or maintenance. This isn't how marriages work. This isn't how partnerships work. And this definitely isn't how pregnancy should feel." But Patty, loyal beyond reason, continued defending the man who was systematically abandoning her. You don't understand the pressure he's under, Nicole. Building a company this size requires sacrifices from both of us. When things settle down, when the current expansion phase is complete, he'll be more present. He's doing this for our family. Thus, Nicole would watch her friend make these excuses and feel her heart break a little more each time. She could see what Patty refused to acknowledge, that Carlson wasn't building for their family anymore. He was building for himself, for his ego, for the validation and admiration he received from a world that worshipped successful men and forgot the women who helped create that success. The loneliness of Patty's pregnancy was profound and devastating. She attended doctor appointments alone, listening to their baby's heartbeat with no one to share the wonder. She prepared the nursery alone, choosing paint colors and furniture while Carlson traveled to places she only knew about from his credit card statements. She felt their baby's first kicks alone, pressing her hands to her growing belly, and wishing desperately for someone to witness these miracles with her. Meanwhile, Carlson and Shannon's relationship deepened with each business trip. They developed inside jokes, shared looks across conference tables, and created a world where only they understood the complexities of running a billion-dollar empire. Shannon made herself indispensable not just professionally but emotionally. She was the one who understood his stress, celebrated his victories, and provided the intellectual stimulation that made him feel alive. The Monaco trip in Patty's 34th week of pregnancy was supposed to be Carlson's most important business venture yet, a crucial investor meeting that would secure their family's future forever. At least that's what he told Patty as he packed his bags, kissing her forehead and rubbing her tummy absently while already mentally preparing for the trip ahead. The truth was different and far more painful. Carlson and Shannon were celebrating the successful closure of a $50 million acquisition deal. The Monaco trip was their victory celebration, a long weekend of luxury and freedom, and the intoxicating feeling of being untouchable. They stayed on a private yacht, anchored in Monaco's harbor, surrounded by crystal blue water and Mediterranean sunshine. Shannon had packed a flowing white dress that caught the sea breeze perfectly, making her look like some mythological goddess of success and ambition. They drank champagne that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a month, dined on delicacies prepared by a private chef, and made love under stars that seemed to bless their forbidden romance. Shannon felt like she had already won. Here she was, 26 years old, living a life of absolute luxury, with one of the most successful men in technology. She had replaced the garage startup wife with something better, a partner who matched Carlson's ambition, understood his world, and enhanced his vision rather than simply supporting it. Carlson switched off his phone on their first night in Monaco, choosing to live completely in the fantasy they had created together. No board meetings, no investor calls, no pregnant wife wondering when he would come home, just Shannon, success, and the intoxicating freedom of being exactly who he believed he was meant to be. Back in Beverly Hills, Patty began her 34th week of pregnancy with morning yoga in their marble-floored living room, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the city where her husband was supposed to be building their future. She had been feeling off all morning, a vague restlessness that she attributed to missing Carlson and worrying about his important meetings. The first contraction hit at 9:47 a.m., sharp and urgent, doubling her over on the yoga mat. For a moment she thought it might be false labor, something she had read about in pregnancy books, but the second contraction, stronger and more insistent, told her this was real. Their baby was coming early. Panic flooded through her as she reached for her phone, dialing Carlson's number with shaking fingers. "Carlson, please pick up. The baby's coming early. I'm scared, and I need you to come home. Please call me back." But Carlson's phone was switched off, lost somewhere in the Mediterranean haze of champagne and Shannon's laughter. Patty's desperate voice went straight to voicemail, joining the message queue of a man who had chosen fantasy over reality, ambition over family, and temporary pleasure over permanent love. She tried again, her voice breaking with pain and fear. "Carlson, I can't wait any longer. The contractions are getting stronger. Please call me back. Our baby is coming, and I'm alone." The heartbreaking realization settled over her like ice water. For the most important moment of their shared life, she was truly completely alone. Nicole was standing in the security line at LAX, boarding pass in hand for United Flight 47 to Chicago, when her phone buzzed with Patty's call. She almost let it go to voicemail. This was the biggest client presentation of her career, a marketing campaign for a major entertainment studio that could transform her professional trajectory. But something about the timing felt urgent, and Nicole had learned to trust her instincts when it came to her best friend. "Patty, what's wrong?" Nicole asked immediately, recognizing the pain in her friend's voice even through the phone. "Nicole, the baby's coming early. I can't reach Carlson, and I need to get to the hospital now. I'm scared." Patty's voice was tight with contractions and terror, the kind of fear that cuts through everything else and demands immediate action. Nicole didn't hesitate. "I'm coming," she said, already stepping out of the security line, her Chicago dreams temporarily forgotten. "Don't move. Don't try to drive yourself. I'm leaving the airport right now." She abandoned her luggage with airport security, explaining briefly that a family emergency required her immediate departure. The boarding pass for her career-changing presentation went into the trash. The hotel reservation, the rental car, the months of preparation, all of it became secondary to the woman who needed her most. Nicole broke every speed limit getting from LAX to Beverly Hills, her hands gripping the steering wheel as she navigated Los Angeles traffic with urgent precision. She made the 40-minute drive in 23 minutes. Running red lights and weaving through lanes while praying to whatever gods might be listening to keep Patty and the baby safe until she arrived. She found Patty on the marble kitchen floor of their mansion, breathing through contractions and tears, her yoga mat bunched beneath her as she tried to manage pain that was clearly intensifying. The sight broke Nicole's heart. This woman who had given everything to build her husband's empire, now laboring alone in a house that felt more like a monument to success than a home filled with love. "Oh, honey," Nicole whispered, immediately kneeling beside Patty and taking her hands. "I'm here now. You're not alone anymore. Let's get you to the hospital." Nicole helped Patty to her car, quickly throwing together a hospital bag with items she hoped were appropriate: comfortable clothes, toiletries, phone chargers, and the pregnancy book Patty had been reading religiously. She drove through Beverly Hills and West Hollywood with practiced urgency, one hand on the wheel and one holding Patty's hand, coaching her through contractions with the calm authority of someone who refused to let fear take control. "Breathe with me, Patty, in and out. Focus on my voice. You're the strongest woman I know, and you're going to get through this. Your baby is going to be fine, and you're going to be an incredible mother." During the drive, Patty tried calling Carlson one more time, her voice breaking with pain and desperation. "Carlson, Nicole's driving me to the hospital now. Our baby is coming. Please, if you get this message, just come home. I need you. We need you." But somewhere in Monaco, Carlson's phone remained switched off, silent in a yacht cabin, while he slept beside another woman, oblivious to the fact that his child was fighting to enter the world 3,000 miles away. Cedars-Sinai Medical Center became the battleground where Patty fought for 12 agonizing hours to bring Lucas into the world. Nicole never left her side, becoming the labor coach, the emotional support and the fierce advocate that Carlson should have been. When contractions peaked, Nicole held Patty's hand and breathed with her. When exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, Nicole wiped her forehead with cool cloths and whispered encouragement. The nurses kept asking about the husband with the kind of professional concern that barely masked their judgment. Where was the father? Was he coming? Did he know the baby was arriving early? Nicole's protective instincts kicked in with each inquiry, her responses becoming increasingly firm. "He's not here, but I am, and I'm not going anywhere. This woman has everything she needs right here." Baby Lucas arrived weighing barely 4 pounds, a tiny fighter who came into the world 6 weeks early and immediately required intensive medical intervention. The moment he was born, medical staff whisked him away to the NICU, his premature lungs struggling with the basic act of breathing. Patty, exhausted and terrified, reached out desperately as they took her son away. "He's so tiny, Nicole. What if something happens to him? What if I lose him?" Patty's voice was raw with exhaustion and primal fear, the terror of a mother watching her child fight for life. Nicole squeezed Patty's hand with fierce determination. "He's going to be fine. He's strong. just like his mama. Look at what you just did. You brought him into this world practically by yourself. He's got your fighting spirit, and we're going to take care of him together." While Patty rested and recovered, Nicole became Lucas's guardian angel. She stood vigil at the NICU window, watching over the tiny baby connected to machines and monitors, surrounded by the controlled chaos of premature birth. She spoke to the nurses, asked questions about his condition, and became the father figure Lucas desperately needed in those critical first hours. Nicole handled all the logistics that new fathers typically manage, calling family members, dealing with paperwork, coordinating with medical staff, and ensuring that Patty could focus entirely on healing and bonding with her son. She slept in the uncomfortable hospital chair, ate cafeteria food, and wore the same clothes from the airport because being present mattered more than being comfortable. 12 hours after Lucas's birth, as Patty and Nicole sat in the NICU watching the tiny baby fight for every breath, Nicole's face went white as she scrolled through her phone. She had been checking social media absently, a distraction from the medical intensity surrounding them, when Shannon's Instagram feed appeared on her screen. "Patty," Nicole said quietly, her voice filled with a mixture of rage and heartbreak, "I need to show you something, but I want you to know that I'm only showing you this because you deserve to know the truth." Shannon's Instagram was filled with photos from Monaco, each one more devastating than the last. Carlson feeding Shannon strawberries poolside, both of them laughing with the carefree abandon of people who had no responsibilities beyond their own pleasure. Dancing at exclusive nightclubs, Shannon's white dress flowing around her like she was the bride in some twisted fantasy, both wearing matching Monaco memories bracelets, tangible proof of their shared betrayal. The timestamps were the cruelest detail of all. The photos were posted during Patty's labor, during Lucas's first hours of life, during the most critical moments when a father should have been present. While Patty fought to bring their son into the world, Carlson was celebrating another woman under Mediterranean stars. "I told you this was happening, but you didn't want to listen," Nicole said gently, tears streaming down her face, as she showed Patty the evidence. "I just wanted to protect you from this pain. I hoped I was wrong, but I wasn't. I'm so sorry, my dear friend. You deserve so much more than this betrayal." Patty stared at the photos until her vision blurred with tears that felt like they were burning her soul. There was her husband, the man she had loved and supported and defended for years, celebrating another woman while their premature son fought for his first breath. The juxtaposition was so cruel it felt surreal. Joy and betrayal existing simultaneously in the same universe, separated only by an ocean and a complete absence of conscience. Something inside Patty's heart didn't just break, it shattered completely, like glass hitting concrete. But from that destruction, something else emerged. A strength she didn't know she possessed, a fierce maternal rage that would not tolerate being invisible anymore. "Never again," she whispered, her voice hollow but determined. "Never again will I be invisible. Never again will I accept being treated like I don't matter. Never again will I defend someone who treats me like a convenience instead of a partner." The transformation was immediate and profound. The woman who had spent years making excuses for Carlson's behavior, who had rationalized obvious signs of betrayal, who had defended him to friends who could see what she refused to acknowledge, that woman was gone forever. In her place emerged a mother who would protect her son from ever witnessing the kind of disrespect she had tolerated, a woman who understood her own worth for the first time in years, a person who would never again mistake love for loyalty to someone undeserving of either. As Nicole held her hand and baby Lucas fought for life in the NICU, Patty began preparing for a war she should never have needed to fight, but she would fight it, and she would win it, because she finally understood that some battles are worth everything. The woman who had funded dreams was about to become the woman who demanded respect, and Carlson had no idea what was coming for him. "Family, I want you to think about Nicole, the friend who abandoned everything to be there when it mattered most. We all need a Nicole in our lives. If you have someone like that, take a moment to appreciate them below." Carlson arrived at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, 18 hours after his son's birth, still wearing his yacht club blazer from Monaco, the fabric wrinkled from sleeping in first-class airline seats during his panic journey home. The scent of expensive cologne mixed with guilt clung to him, like evidence of crimes he thought he had hidden perfectly. His phone finally switched back on during his layover in Paris, had exploded with dozens of missed calls and increasingly desperate voicemails from Patty. He burst through the hospital doors with the practiced urgency of a man performing concern, rather than feeling it. His mind raced with the carefully crafted story he had rehearsed during the 8-hour flight. Mediterranean cell towers were notoriously unreliable, the investor meetings had run catastrophically over schedule, and he had moved heaven and earth to get home the moment he received her messages. But when Carlson reached the NICU and saw Patty sitting beside their son's incubator, something in her posture told him that his prepared explanations would not be enough. She looked up at him with eyes that held no relief, no gratitude for his arrival, no forgiveness for his absence. She looked at him like she was seeing a stranger wearing her husband's face. "Patty, darling, I'm so sorry," he began, his voice smooth with the same confidence that had convinced investors to hand him millions. The Mediterranean had absolutely no cell service, and the investor meetings ran completely over schedule. "I came home the moment I got your messages. How is our son? How are you?" But Patty's gaze had already moved to Shannon's bracelet on his wrist, the matching Monaco memories jewelry that he had forgotten to remove in his rush to return home. She noticed the dinner receipts protruding from his jacket pocket, romantic establishments that served couples, not business associates. She could smell another woman's perfume woven into his clothes, a scent that definitely wasn't hers. "Where did you get that bracelet?" Patty asked quietly, her voice devoid of emotion, but loaded with knowledge that made Carlson's blood turn cold. He looked down at his wrist, his face going white as he realized his crucial mistake. The bracelet that had felt like a romantic memento in Monaco now felt like a noose tightening around his throat. His mouth opened and closed without sound, his practiced lies crumbling under the weight of physical evidence. Patty pulled out her phone with movements that seemed almost robotic, her fingers navigating to Shannon's Instagram with the precision of someone who had already seen everything but needed to watch him see it too. She turned the screen toward him, showing him the photos that had destroyed her heart completely. There he was, feeding Shannon strawberries poolside, dancing with her at exclusive clubs, both wearing the bracelets that now felt like evidence in his own prosecution. The timestamps were the most damning evidence of all, celebrations posted while his wife labored alone and his son fought for his first breath. "Get out," Patty said, her voice hollow with betrayal but steady with newfound strength. "I know where you were while I gave birth to your son alone. I know who you prioritized while our baby fought for his life. I know everything, Carlson. Finally, I know everything." Carlson's stammered attempts at explanation died in his throat as he looked between the phone screen and his wife's face. 8 years of marriage collapsed in that single conversation, destroyed not by the affair itself but by the cruel timing of his choice to be absent during the most important moment of their shared life. The legal battle that followed became front-page news across Silicon Valley and beyond. The family values CEO who had built his public image on work-life balance and supporting working families was exposed as a man who had abandoned his wife during childbirth to conduct an affair with his assistant. The courtroom in Beverly Hills was packed with tech industry reporters, investors, and curious onlookers drawn to the spectacular fall of a billionaire. Patty's legal team, led by the most ruthless divorce attorney in California, presented a case built on years of meticulous documentation. Bank statements showing Shannon's unexplained designer purchases, travel records revealing business trips that included romantic destinations and luxury accommodations for two, phone records demonstrating the emotional affair that had preceded the physical betrayal. Shannon was compelled to testify, her designer composure cracking under aggressive cross-examination. She revealed conversations where Carlson had described Patty as the woman who had served her purpose, and their unborn child as an obligation that complicated everything. Her testimony painted a picture of a man who viewed his family as obstacles to overcome, rather than treasures to protect. Judge Morrison's verdict was scathing and comprehensive. "Miss Renner, you abandoned your wife during the most critical moment of childbirth to conduct an affair that lasted over a year. Your actions demonstrate a fundamental lack of character and a complete disregard for the vows you took and the family you created. This court finds your behavior unconscionable." Patty received 70% of their assets, full custody of Lucas, and control of the tech company she had helped build from nothing. The settlement recognized not just her financial contributions during their garish startup days, but her strategic role in building the empire that had made them billionaires. Justice felt like cold comfort, but it was justice nonetheless. Carlson's fall was swift and merciless. The board of directors, already concerned about the negative publicity surrounding their CEO's personal life, used the divorce proceedings as justification to remove him from leadership. Investors pulled funding from projects associated with his name. Business partners distanced themselves from the scandal that had transformed him from visionary entrepreneur to cautionary tale. Shannon, who had felt so victorious during their Monaco service, immediately left Carlson for a competitor who offered better career prospects and hadn't yet been destroyed by public scandal. The woman who had whispered about deserving someone who understood success abandoned him the moment his success evaporated. Carlson moved from their 12,000-square-foot Beverly Hills mansion to a modest studio apartment in Burbank, his billionaire lifestyle reduced to the basics of survival. The man who had once commanded boardrooms full of executives now attended support groups for divorced fathers, sitting in circles of folding chairs and learning to admit his failures out loud. "I had everything," he would say during those group sessions, his voice cracking with the weight of genuine remorse. "I had a woman who believed in me when nobody else would, who worked 2 jobs to fund my dreams, who sacrificed her youth for our shared future. And I threw it all away because I took her love for granted, and chased validation from someone who never really cared about me." For 3 years, Carlson fought for every supervised visit with Lucas, earning back trust in 15-minute increments under the watchful eyes of court-appointed monitors. He learned his son's favorite foods, his bedtime routines, his fears and dreams, all while living with the knowledge that another woman had been there for Lucas's first words, first steps, and first everything. Meanwhile, Patty built her own legal empire from the ground up, using the knowledge she had gained during her years at Henderson and Associates to create a revolutionary family law practice that specialized in protecting women during high-asset divorces. Her firm, Martinez Family Legal Services, became the go-to destination for women facing betrayal by powerful husbands who thought money could buy silence and compliance. Patty understood the legal system from both sides. She knew how paralegals worked, how documents could be hidden, how assets could be moved, and how intimidation tactics were used to pressure vulnerable women into accepting unfair settlements. Her firm operated with the precision of someone who had lived through the battle and emerged victorious. Nicole became Lucas's godmother and Patty's business partner, her marketing expertise helping to build a practice that served women across California. Together they created a firm that operated on principles reflecting Patty's values: transparent billing, compassionate representation, and a commitment to ensuring that no woman would face betrayal alone and unprepared. Patty's legal practice revolutionized how family law was practiced, offering sliding-scale fees for women with limited resources and comprehensive support services that addressed not just legal needs but emotional and financial recovery. She proved that success in law could coexist with genuine care for clients, that building a practice could prioritize justice over pure profit. When Carlson attempted reconciliation through expensive gifts and grand gestures, Patty responded with polite but firm boundaries. "Thank you but no," became her standard response to flowers, jewelry, and elaborate apologies. She had learned the difference between love and manipulation, between genuine change and performed remorse. Patty's success was measured not just in case victories and client testimonials, but in the life she created for herself and Lucas. She attended every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every important moment that Carlson had missed during their marriage. She dated occasionally, but never brought men around Lucas, protecting her son from the confusion of temporary relationships. The woman who had once been invisible in her own marriage became a legal advocate whose voice commanded respect in courtrooms across California. The woman who had funded someone else's dreams became the architect of her own professional empire. The woman who had been betrayed became the champion of other women facing similar battles. But redemption, Patty was about to learn, sometimes comes in forms we don't expect, at times we aren't prepared for, and from people we thought we could never forgive. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning in October, when Lucas was already 3 years old. healthy and vibrant, running through Patty's Manhattan Beach home with the boundless energy that had convinced everyone his premature birth complications were completely behind him. Dr. Richardson's voice was calm but serious as she explained the results of Lucas's routine cardiology follow-up. The appointment Patty had almost cancelled because Lucas seemed so perfectly normal. "Mrs. Rana, we've discovered that Lucas has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the same rare heart condition that affected his paternal family line. It's the same condition that took Carlson's younger brother when he was 7 years old. We need to discuss treatment options immediately." The words hit Patty like physical blows, each medical term feeling like a death sentence for the child she had fought so hard to bring into the world and protect ever since. Lucas, her miracle baby who had survived premature birth, who had grown into a bright, curious toddler with Carlson's intelligence and her determination, now faced the same genetic time bomb that had killed his uncle. Patty's terror was primal and overwhelming. She had sacrificed everything to give Lucas life, had built her entire existence around protecting him from harm, and now she faced the possibility that genetics might take him away despite every precaution she could take. The irony was cruel beyond comprehension. She had saved Lucas from his father's neglect, only to discover that his father's DNA might be the greatest threat of all. The medical appointments became Patty's new full-time job. Cardiology specialists, surgical consultations, second opinions, third opinions, experimental treatment protocols. She pursued every option with the desperate intensity of a mother who refused to accept that some battles couldn't be won through sheer determination and unlimited resources. What surprised her most was Carlson's presence. Not intrusive, not demanding, but simply there. She would emerge from specialist appointments to find him sitting in his car in the hospital parking lot, not approaching her but available if needed. He never tried to insert himself into medical discussions or challenge her decisions about Lucas's care. He simply existed on the periphery of their crisis, ready to help if asked, but respectful of the boundaries she had established. During one particularly difficult consultation where doctors discussed the necessity of open-heart surgery, Patty noticed Carlson through the hospital window, sitting alone in his modest sedan. He looked older, worn down by 3 years of supervised visits and the weight of what he had lost, but he was there, keeping vigil in his own quiet way, honoring his son's crisis even from a distance. The night before Lucas's surgery, Patty couldn't sleep. She paced her Manhattan Beach home, checking on her sleeping son every few minutes, memorizing his peaceful face and steady breathing. At 2 a.m. she found herself calling Carlson for the first time in 2 years. "He's so small," she whispered into the phone, her voice breaking with exhaustion and fear. "He's only 3 years old, and tomorrow they're going to stop his heart and try to fix it. What if something goes wrong? What if I lose him?" "We won't lose him," Carlson replied, his voice steady with a certainty she desperately needed to hear. "He's strong, Patty. He's got your fighting spirit and your refusal to give up. He's going to be fine." The surgery lasted 8 hours. Patty spent those hours in the surgical waiting room, pacing like a caged animal, surviving on coffee and prayer and the kind of raw maternal determination that refuses to consider defeat. Carlson arrived after 2 hours, not presuming to sit beside her but positioning himself across the room where she could see him if she needed to, but ignore him if she preferred. At hour 6, exhaustion and stress finally overcame Patty's adrenaline. She collapsed in the waiting room, her legs giving out from under her as fatigue and terror finally overwhelmed her body's ability to function. Carlson was there instantly, catching her before she hit the floor, his arms wrapping around her with the same protective instinct he had shown during their garage days. For the first time in years, Patty didn't pull away. She let him hold her, let his strength support her when her own strength failed. Let herself remember what it felt like to share a burden with someone who loved Lucas as much as she did. They held vigil together for the remaining 2 hours, united in their love for their son and their shared terror of losing him. When Dr. Morrison emerged from surgery with good news, the procedure had been successful. Lucas's heart was strong, and his prognosis was excellent. Patty and Carlson cried together with the relief of parents who had faced their worst nightmare and emerged victorious. The tears they shed were not just for Lucas's recovery, but for the recognition that some bonds transcend betrayal and abandonment. Nicole, who had been Patty's constant companion throughout the medical crisis, watched her friend's interaction with Carlson with the wisdom of someone who understood love's complexities. She saw how Patty's anger had softened into something more nuanced, how Carlson's presence had provided comfort that Patty hadn't expected to need or want. "I think it's time you considered giving Carlson a real chance again," Nicole said one evening as they watched Lucas play in Patty's backyard, his surgical scar barely visible beneath his shirt. "Not because he deserves it, but because you do. I've watched him these past 3 years, Patty. He's worked tirelessly to become someone worthy of your trust again, even when you've given him no encouragement." Nicole continued gently, "I see how you look at him when he's not watching. There's still love there, buried under hurt but still alive. Lucas needs his father, and maybe you need him too. Not the man who betrayed you, but the man he's become through losing everything that mattered." The breakthrough came at Lucas's 4th birthday party in Patty's Manhattan Beach home. She had planned a small celebration, just family and close friends, but when Lucas asked if Daddy could help with decorations, Patty found herself saying yes. Carlson arrived early, not presuming anything but grateful for the opportunity to contribute to his son's happiness. They worked together in the backyard, hanging streamers and setting up tables, falling into an easy rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Carlson had learned to follow Patty's lead, to ask permission rather than assume authority, to earn his place in their lives rather than demand it. As they watched Lucas run through the backyard with other children, both parents marveling at their son's complete recovery and boundless energy, something shifted between them. The anger that had sustained Patty for 3 years began to transform into something softer, more hopeful. "Thank you," Patty said, simply as they cleaned up after the party, Lucas napping inside after his excitement, "for showing up, for becoming someone Lucas can be proud to call father, for respecting my boundaries while still being present when we needed you." Carlson looked at the woman he had betrayed and lost, the mother who had saved their son's life multiple times through sheer determination and love. "Patty, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for the chance to spend the rest of my life proving I can be the husband and father I should have been from the beginning. Not because I want my old life back, but because I want to build something better with the woman I never stopped loving, even when I was too blind and selfish to see what I had." For the first time in 4 years, Patty allowed herself to hope that love might be stronger than betrayal, that family might be worth the risk of trusting again. Patty looked up at the man who had destroyed their family, then spent 4 years rebuilding himself into someone worthy of their love. She saw genuine remorse in his eyes, real change in his actions, and the kind of humility that only comes from losing everything that matters. "You missed Lucas's birth because you chose someone else over us," she said quietly, her voice steady but not cold. "But you've shown up for every important moment since. Nicole's right, I do still love you, Carlson. And maybe it's time I stopped being afraid of hoping again. But we take this slow. I need time to trust again, time to believe that this version of you is real and permanent." When Carlson kissed her forehead, it felt like forgiveness and second chances, like the promise that some love stories aren't about perfection, they're about learning, growing, and choosing each other every single day, even after everything falls apart. My family, Patty's story teaches us that sometimes the greatest strength comes from our darkest moments. She found her power when she had nothing left to lose. Carlson learned that success means nothing without the people who helped you achieve it. And Nicole showed us that true friendship means showing up when it costs you everything. But here's what I want you to remember. This story isn't just about them. It's about every person who has ever felt forgotten, every dreamer who has ever been betrayed, and every heart that has ever hoped for a second chance. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope. Like this video to help it reach others who need to hear it. Subscribe and ring that notification bell, because every week, I bring you multiple stories that remind us of our shared humanity. And remember, you are never as alone as you think you are. There's always someone willing to be your Nicole, and there's always hope for a new beginning. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep believing in second chances, and keep believing in yourself.